Islam, Shalom, Assalamu alaikum, Osio, Hola, Aloha, Bonjour. It's your brother Zach Bay, Indigenous American Moor, coming to you live and in full effect. Thank you for joining me. Please hit that like, share, subscribe, hit the thumbs up for my channel, help with the algorithm. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Today I want to talk a little bit about how evil targets generations or generational curses. I want to start off with a short list of other nations of people who have gone through generational curses or evil targeting their nation to affect the entire generation of people and maybe even beyond. I want to say it happened to the Italians, it happened to the Irish, it happened to the Chinese, it happened to the Japanese, it happened to the so-called Jewish, it happened to the American Indians or the Moors of America. It happened to all of us, it happened to everybody. I specifically want to focus on my people, the American Indians, the Moors of America. So, it says, whose turn is it, or whose time is it? Like I said, all these different nations of people have gone through a targeting of their generations by evil, either to do them in, to destroy a people, to disenfranchise, to deter, to make subhuman or less than human. Often to crush the will and to crush the spirit of an entire people, a nation of people, so they don't prosper, so they don't progress, so they don't move forward in a positive way. So they stay where they are, stagnant, dead. I want to start off in, I would say, like 3 steps. I want to go through the past, then I want to hit the present, and then I'm going to touch on the future. Alright, so how evil targeted our past. I would say it targeted our past by shortening our lifespans. I'm talking specifically the American Indians, the Moors of America. How was our lifespan shortened? Through like antiquity. Our people were always well known for longevity, for being healers, for being extremely fit, prime physical specimens, shamans, medicine men and women, so we always were able to heal ourselves. We always had longevity. We lived a very, very long time through our natural remedies and our natural traditions and way of life. The way it's been shortened by we have been disconnected from the way of our ancestors, as far as we don't practice the same traditional ways of life that they used to in order to sustain themselves, to sustain our people as generations go on. This is evident through the fact that our elders do not live as long. They say like the average life of a man is maybe like 75, and then the woman is maybe 10, maybe 20 years after that. So women, they would generally live longer. The females of most nations of people of tribes, the women would most likely live the longest. Of course, because they weren't the first to go to war, to go out and hunt, and to face the most like brutal conditions of the elements and nature in the environment. They weren't specifically on the front lines to do that. As far as any other group of people or nation of people, the men normally do the most difficult jobs. You know, historically, men are the ones who would leave and go to war to fight and defend. So, you know, generally women would live longer, and even to this day, that's, you know, generally how it goes. Women live maybe about 20 years longer than their husbands, wives. So our generations have been targeted through that. Another reason is our elders don't live long enough to even collect SSI or Social Security insurance. I specifically think that's done by design. There's, in the past, we used to live much, much longer. Our people do still live pretty long. Some of the ones who haven't lost their traditional ways, who may be more connected, living off of the land, growing their own food, collecting their own water, keeping up the same routines, traditional practices, things of that nature, in order to safeguard their sacred lives. You know, a lot of our people are in the cities. We're around pollution, you know, a lot of different things historically have targeted and targeted specifically our people in order to shorten our lifespans on this land, in order for foreigners to come in and take it over. All right, that has been done systematically. So I find it very, very odd and peculiar that so-called black men, you know, because that's who the American Indian really is, these so-called black people of America. The men normally don't live long enough to collect Social Security. So think about it. You spend all your life working, paying into the Social Security, these benefits, in order for it to be some type of benefit to you and your family when you're unable to work. So you pay into that in order to have a benefit for the future, for when you're unable to work or if you get sick or something like that. All right. Most of our people don't live long enough to even collect that. So they're paying their entire lives into this system, and at the end, they're not getting anything in return. Sure, their family may be able to apply and collect said Social Security for said relative who may have passed away, grandfather, grandmother, who didn't live long enough to collect and live off of that, to make any kind of benefit toward the future progression of their family. You know, it's just a fact. A lot of our people don't really live long enough to collect and to live off of that, but they spent their entire lives paying into it. I would say we lost a lot of our history. So a lot of the traditional remedies and cultural practices that our ancestors did, we lost them because we lost our elders. All right. The elders were some of the first ones to go, the ones who held the stories, like the soothsayers, the ones who held oral history of our lineage or our past, our ancestors, different gods or different spirits or like elements that our people might have put energy toward. You know, we lost a lot of that. We lost a lot of the old ways. We're gone because the elders were some of the first ones to go. And then they put the children into these like boarding schools. So we lost what our ancestors would have been telling us and teaching us, our elders, and then they teach the new generation, the young generation, the children. Like you go off to school maybe 5 years old, kindergarten, and they're indoctrinated. We weren't allowed to speak our traditional languages, our heritage. We weren't allowed to dress in our traditional clothing, garbs. We weren't allowed to wear traditional hairstyles. They intentionally cut our hair. They intentionally didn't allow us to wear our traditional clothing. We weren't allowed to speak our indigenous tongues and our dialects here in the Americas, in the school systems when they were first set up in order to teach the youth of the tribes, even the so-called 5 civilized tribes or any so-called wild Indian who after development may have become an urban Indian, living in cities and townships, things of that nature, who weren't considered wild and like on the plains or in the so-called Indian territories. All right, so I believe that's just historically. A lot of our history was lost and it was stolen. It was lost because our ancestors, the elders, passed away without being able to share that information because there were plenty of laws that forbid us from speaking our indigenous tongues or for teaching our heritage and culture, for even claiming to be a part of a tribe, to be part of a people, the indigenous people from here. All right, there were plenty of laws against that. So that was how in the past we were targeted, and that targeting in the past affected the generations to come. All right, so let's move forward. So from the past to the present, I believe our present is targeted through genocide, through mass incarceration, physical genocide, through the food, housing, healthcare, abortion, paper genocide just being written out of history. And when I say housing, there were specific places where, even to this day, so-called reservations or ghettos, certain like low-income neighborhoods that were so-called like redlined, they would specifically place, even to this day, they specifically place those areas near like the industrialized areas. So there's a lot of like factories or there will be a lot of factories, or maybe it will be near a waste dump or something like that. And then that area will be redlined, and then our people will be moved to those areas specifically. So think about it. If you live not too far from a waste dump or you live not too far from a factory, you could potentially have side effects, and most likely you will, from the air quality, the pollution in the air, poisoning the waters, just being in that environment, in that vicinity, so close to where they're creating toxic chemicals, toxic additives are going into the water supply and the food supply. They're actually adding toxic additives into the food supply. And then the healthcare system, excuse me, 1 second. There we go. The healthcare system, as far as we never really got the best healthcare. Like, it's even coming out to this day. A lot of reports came out in 2023 about the healthcare industry having disparities in the care of so-called Black or African American people here in America. The mortality rate, while inside of those medical facilities, seem to be higher. Even the fetal death rate, the maternal death rate of women giving birth, things of that nature. It just seems that somehow our people, my people, always get the subpar treatment or care whenever it comes to those situations, whether it be to like a benign neglect or a targeting as far as forced sterilization or a undisclosed sterilization. I think that's very important to look into, to look at. If you haven't heard too much about it, I'm guessing by now most people have, but that's definitely something to look into. Another reason why they're targeting us today, in the present day, is the destruction of our image, all right? Publicly and internationally. I think that's very important. It's mentally, and it's a psyop. It's pretty much psychological attacks, and those psychological attacks kind of bolster the physical treatment that our people might receive in our own homeland or even abroad in other countries. All right, so what I mean by destruction of our image, in a lot of different countries, they show only like the so-called gangster or the so-called pimp image of so-called Black men, the indigenous men of this country. They show us in a very negative light. The women, our women, they show our women in a very negative light as being very belligerent or over-sexualized. Yes, very, very over-sexualized. So here in this country and internationally, this image is out there of our people. I know a lot of people were talking about how the GTA 6 trailer came out, and they were showing a lot of images of the people in Florida, and they said every image they showed of an indigenous person, of a Moorish person, so-called Black person, every time they showed an image or likeness of them, they were always like in a negative stereotype or something like that. That's done intentionally. The destruction of our image internationally is done intentionally, and it affects us mentally and physically, and that goes from the present day. It goes from the past to the present day and into the future. So that's very, very important. We have to guard ourselves against these psychological attacks. We almost have to fight against an image. There's a thing people call code switching, where if you're in a professional environment, you may not use the same slang language, or you might not speak in the same dialect that you would normally speak with when you are talking to close friends or family, and you're in a relaxed setting and environment. There's been a controlled agenda to make us look less intelligent, to make us seem less compassionate, to make us seem more belligerent, more violent, more prone to violence, to seem like we're more dangerous, to be perceived as a physical threat. So therefore, more excessive force should be used in regards to somebody who looks like me, somebody who shares my complexion, somebody who is a so-called black person, more in America, indigenous American Indian. All right. That's intentionally done, destroying our image. And we as a people need to correct that image, because there are groups of people, or there are other nations of people, and this isn't just done specifically to us, but there's other people that it has been attempted to be done to, and they have fought back against those false narratives and images that would hold them to a negative stereotype. All right, I think it's very, very important that we as a people take control of our international image and our national image in general, because I'm so tired of seeing our women seem as they're the most sex crazed, most deviant. I'm so tired of seeing our men seem like painted in the light or the image of somebody who is unintelligent, somebody who is very maybe boastful, or very vulgar, or very destructive or dangerous in some lights. You know, this whole gangster image, this whole thug image is only painted on, so-called black people. This, when people say ghetto, and they use that type of terminology as describing something as ghetto, they're not talking about the ghettos of Nazi Germany. They're not speaking on the ghettos of Nazi Germany, where those things originally came from. They're speaking of a so-called behavior or image or narrative that is associated with so-called black people in America. That's what it is, and I hate it so much. I hate it with a passion. We really have to do something to correct this. No one else is going to do this for us as a people. No one else is going to come save us. We have to collectively say, no, you will not show us in this light, in this way, in this likeness. You will not place our picture here and then place negativity around it. No more. It has to end. And this has to be done on a national scale, on an international scale, because it's indeed spiritual warfare. They are belittling us, and they are diminishing our light and our worth on a physical, a mental, and a spiritual level. And that's done specifically to destroy our people. All right. And to move along, I want to segue into the third, our future. All right. So, us controlling our image will help us control our present and our future. And a way that they're targeting our future is by the schools, like they did in the past, the mass media, and social norms. Also, dumbing down of the masses in the school to prison pipeline. Right? So in the schools, they're pushing certain narratives by not teaching the correct history. We already know they've done this historically in our past in order to wipe out our cultural identity and to create this fiction of a so-called black or white person, or pretty much the Negro. They created these terms and terminologies, and then they teach the youth in order to push that into the future. right? So we have to correct that as a people. We have to make sure our youths are learning the correct terms, that we're not referring to ourselves present day or even in the future as Black people, as minorities, any of these negative connotations that go along with our image, our self-worth, our value, our people, our nation. The school to prison pipeline is very, very detrimental because children aren't even getting a fair shot, or aren't even given a fair shot at becoming a healthy, functioning member of the society, because the less healthy, functioning members of a society that look like us, the less of those they have, the more they can continue to paint that narrative of our image of us being violent or unintelligent, or any of these negative things that are attributed to so-called Blackness, being, ghetto, being dangerous, being violent. These negative things are taught in these school systems, and they're reinforced by the mass media and social norms. And we really have to correct that as a people. Combined with a short attention span and impulsive reactions. All right, so having the youth already having, not just our youth, but all youth already having a shorter attention span than the generations before, and that's being cultivated through different social media applications and different algorithms that are in play to keep a status quo, pretty much, to keep a charade, to keep a charade going on, to continue to pull the wool over our eyes. Because as much as our children have a shorter attention span in this generation, they seem to be very, very much technologically inclined in order to use technology to pretty much bend the world to their will, something that we didn't have too much of in the past. So we really, really have to make sure that going forward, our youth have the correct information to self-identify, for self-determination, and to shape a future that is positive and not negative for our nation of people, being a builder and not a destroyer. Right? I really think that's some of the most important things we can do in order to turn this country around, to affect the global psyche, the global energy, the global mentality that's being shared planetarily, right? Because there are certain frequencies and energies that are unseen, but they have major effects on our lives. Imagine a drop of water hitting any other still body of water. That one drop makes a ripple, and that ripple eventually goes from the center all the way to the edge of that body of water. So that ripple effect can be negative or it can be positive, and the powers that be are pushing those forces or those energies into a negative space, and they want that energy to go forward. They want to keep pushing that narrative forward, and we have to correct that. I want to say also, right. To expand upon that a little bit, with the short attention spans and the impulsive reaction of our youth, it's very hard, it's very difficult for the youth to resist that, because most people know, most people when they were younger, they didn't have the all the mental capacity or fortitude to maybe resist social pressures or peer pressures, stuff like that. You would give in. So it seems, instead of making waves, somebody would just go with the flow. They would just go with what most people are doing, what most people are saying, how most people speak, and when I say most people, I mean their peer group. When our children are in their peer groups, how they communicate with each other, how they act, is really, really important, and that tends to go into the future of how they identify and how they act and react in the future. I would also say they're targeting our future by doing role reversals, which are with counterintuitive traits that forward a depopulation agenda, or even a cross-species planetary extinction. All right, that might be a mouthful right there. And the role reversals, as far as a woman is undefined, or a man is undefined, or a woman can do what a man can do, and a man can do what a woman can do, or a woman is a man, or a man is a woman, or there's no difference between the genders, or this person is supposed to be a provider, a caregiver, this person is supposed to be a wall or a rock, versus this person being this other person, not having those same exact traits or qualities, but having complementing traits and qualities to fit that other person, as like to make a whole. Because there's a thing, there's a saying that when they say opposites attract, as far as magnetism, it definitely has some bearing to that statement, as like opposites attract. But I'm more on the lines of the way that they're reversing the natural roles, even gender roles, that our people traditionally had. We're adopting other nations and other people's ideas and lifestyles, and we're adjusting it to ourselves, or we might be fitting it into our lives, because somebody may be uninformed, somebody, may not have had the proper upbringing to be strong and self-secure in themselves, to know their history and how their people should move. I'm not saying it's wrong for people to practice their own cultures, but when our people start adapting and adjusting to other people's cultural norms and belief and behaviors, it diminishes our own. And it's so bad that we don't even know what our own are. And that was done by design. So they're starting to blur the lines of these gender roles and what we're supposed to be doing out here, because it should be yang and yin. It should be a balance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, in order to make like the perfect divine beings. I spoke on cross-species extermination planetarily. All right, we are the indigenous people from every continent. We are the original humans. We are the original men, the original women. There's somebody from every single continent that shares the same, maybe not exactly the same, but complexion, hue of skin that our people do here on America, America, Morocco, Turtle Island, Northwest Gate, here in the United States. All right, that's the so-called black people, the Niji, the American Moors, the indigenous people of this land. There is a plan to wipe out most of the indigenous creatures on this planet, and maybe to do some transhumanism or some trans ascension type thing, merging the physical, or merging the natural or the organic with the technological. So there will not be any more like 100% homegrown organic beings on this planet. So think about all the creatures that might have gone extinct that we saw in our childhood that are gone now. Have you noticed that they don't even play those Save the Animal Foundation commercials anymore? It's like there was a global outreach saying, yeah, we're just going to give up on these foundations to try to save the whales or to save the ocean or to save the polar bears. It's kind of just like, oh well, the countdown to doomsday is 3 seconds away from midnight. If you know what I'm speaking about, that doomsday clock that has been counting down for years now. That's not our clock, that's theirs. Completely planned by them. I mean, like the global elite. Right, so it's not just us as far as my people. We're in the line. We are one of the targets, one of the primary targets. If they can get rid of the original man, they can get rid of all the original species and all the original plants or whatever. Maybe they want to remake the world. I'm not exactly sure 100% what their plan is. All I know is it's no good for us. It's no good for my people. And we should be resisting that plan and that idea spiritually, mentally, and physically every single day that we draw breath on this earth plane, in order to actually make a better future for our generations and our children, instead of them planning for a global depopulation. As far as birth rates are plummeting in America, birth rates are at a negative in Italy, birth rates are at a negative in Japan. That list I went through at the beginning, the Italians, the Irish, the so-called Jews, the Japanese, the Chinese, and the American Indians, the Moors of America, a lot of these places are in negative births already. In Italy, you can look this information up. Italy is at a negative birth rate. So-called Caucasian or white so-called white Europeans are at a negative birth rate. So-called Jews, so-called Irish, all in negative birth rates. And then abortion is specifically targeted to the youth and also to melanated people. They're also doing forced sterilizations. There's been reports coming out that a bunch of women on the continent of Africa, I want to say somewhere in West Africa, it could be Ghana, Nigeria, Congo, I'm not exactly sure which country, but I know that there was a report that was saying a bunch of young women were forced sterilized, and there is a global lawsuit or something like that that's going after the companies that gave this so-called the medicine that did it. You know what it was, that thing that was out a few years back. But this is just something that's definitely been weighing on my mind. It took me a while to make a video about this. I want most people to think about this fact: every generation should be doing better than the previous generation. We have hit a point within the last few decades that's pretty much on a steady decline. Some might even call it a sharp decline of our generation doing a lot worse than the generation before us. A lot of us can't afford the homes our parents were able to afford. A lot of us aren't able to afford the lifestyles our parents were able to give us. We can barely do that ourselves or for our children. If you have a family and you're out here in this world, in this economy, you see the stress of the artificial inflation, the stress of the high food cost, different necessities. Just buying anything that's real or organic has a price tag that's completely separate from the GMO price tags. So buying something that's natural and real and healthy is actually costing you a lot more than just buying something that's some processed artificial substitute. I really thought this was important, so I made this video. I apologize for it being so long. I didn't think it was going to go on this long, but I would really love to hear your feedback. Comment down below some solutions you think our people can do, and this is for all people, but specifically I want to focus on my people, the Moors of America, the American Indians, so-called Black people. I want to focus on any solutions that you out there in the world might have or might think that might be beneficial, because what's good for one is good for all, and I'm all about the greater good. So if we rise up, everybody else who's with us and like us are going to rise up also. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel. I want to read some comments down below of solutions anybody might have on the topic that I just covered today. Thank you once again. This is your brother Tarik Bey, Indigenous American Moor. Peace.